What's going on, everybody? James here from Artificial Entertainment, and welcome to another episode in the Dynamic Parkour Trait System Full Setup series. And in this video, we're going to be going over how to set up the on-ledge actions and ledge transitions. So let's go ahead and dive in. So in the last video, we had set up the climbing, we got the climb boxes and the collision set up, and we set up the ability for a character to be able to do a little bit of a jump climb from these points to be able to kind of let them move around from point A to point B. Now I am going to go ahead and turn off those traces just really quickly because I left them on from the previous video. And just to kind of reiterate, if you ever do turn them on and forget to turn them off, in the climb settings, under the settings for the dynamic parkour trace system, under climb trace options, climb point trace search settings, trace settings, and just set it to none under the draw debug type. And do the same thing for the secondary search settings. I'm going to set these both to none, and then perfect. All right. So as I had said, we're going to be working on the on-ledge actions today, which is basically going to be like the follow-up actions for things like vaulting over and mantling and doing other sorts of actions that are from a ledge hang type of position. So what we're going to do is first we're going to go to the BP third-person character, give ourselves a little bit of room here, and then under the My Blueprint section, go to Interfaces, Primary Events, Action Events, and then we're going to look for the on-ledge action right here. So we'll double click, bring it into our graph, and pull it over to the rest of our action events. Now, just like what we've been doing before, we're going to kind of box select the mesh in the montage, Control D to duplicate it, and then we're going to plug the execution pins up like so, and then off of the montage to play, get a select node, and for the index for the select here, just plug in the enumeration off of the execution just like this. And there we go. Now we got all of our actions here. We got drop down, jump off, jump to ledge behind, climb up, vault over, mantle, and vault 180 to opposite ledge side. Now we're going to cover each one of these actions, and we're also going to be setting up the one action that we didn't set up in the gap action video, which is the jump to ledge action. So we're going to be setting that up as well in this video. Now, the reason, just to go over really quickly, the reason why I left this action until right now is because there is certain conditions where you can actually use this to be able to get to climb points that are a little closer to the ground than you would want for a vertical wall climb, but maybe a little higher than what you could do for just like grabbing onto it from ground height level. So that's the reason why this hasn't been set up yet, is primarily just because there's a way that you can use it to add an additional climb initiation action. And I wanted to cover that in this video. So we are going to be doing that as well as all of these on-ledge actions today. And the first one that we're going to start with is going to be the drop down action. So this is just essentially just dropping off completely, and we are just kind of getting off of the climb action. So if I go to the tutorial assets, animations, as you can see here, I've gone ahead and just selected all of the animations we're going to be working with today onto the folder and just set them to the character skeleton, got root motion on them. So that's all I've done, just as per the usual. I've just got the animations here, and we're going to work with the raw animation files and make the montages and all that good stuff. So we're going to be doing a ledge drop, so that's going to be the ledge fall down. It's going to be this one here, where it just kind of detaches and then goes into a falling state. So what we're going to do is we're going to right-click, create in a montage, and we'll create a new folder here for montages, and we'll go ahead and just put it up into there, and open this up. Now, the reason why I picked this action specifically first is because this action, it confuses a lot of people, and I totally understand why, because it does behave a little bit differently. In order to get it to work smoothly, it's a little bit of a different setup. So first thing to note is that the ledge fall down selection does not have any warp points. And the reason being is because if you use the root motion, there should be no forward motion that's going to be happening. So essentially, when this action is taken, it's just going to look for where it should kind of take over and start doing its normal falling state. So that's why we're not going to actually add a motion warping point into here. We're just going to look for somewhere around where he's going to be going and entering, like he's a full detach from the ledge. Something right about here. And then under the notifies, we're going to go add notify, and we're going to reset parkour action. And then we're going to click on it, make sure falling is selected, and then save. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is that these types of actions where you can drop off and then you're going to enter into a falling state for X amount of time, you can also use this option here to execute the in-air trace once this happens. So basically, what's going to happen is the second that they release, there's going to be a bit of a 2.2 second delay, I believe is what it's set to. And then it's going to start running the in-air trace to, try and find another ledge you might be able to attach to. So we're going to leave that false for right now, but we are going to cover that in a moment. I just wanted to kind of make a quick note of that. Now, we're going to leave the blend out time to 0.25 for right now. We are going to be adjusting it, but I just want to show you guys. So we go into the third person, blueprints, BP third person character. Don't mind the fact that I just hit play because, we obviously have to add in our animation and allow the action. So let's go ahead and we're going to get our ledge fall montage here in the little window that we have and use the file browser here to select it. And then in the drop down action, we're just going to go ahead and put it right into there. So we'll save. And then if we go into the dynamic parkour trace system, and then under the climb settings options, we're going to go into climb type settings, ledge type settings, allowed on ledge actions. And this is where all the allowed actions would be for all of the ledge based actions. So such as everything we're working with today, basically. So we're going to go ahead and select the drop down to true. And we'll leave all the other ones as false for right now, but we'll go ahead and just select that one to true. And now if we go ahead and we climb up, and we hit the hit down on the keyboard, you can see that it goes ahead and drops down and releases from the ledge. Now, one thing to note is that currently the drop down is just kind of like if there's nothing below you, that's going to be what it does. So if it does not detect a climb point, it's going to do the drop down and not the climb jump down. So that's one thing just to keep in mind is that how your climb points are set up, right? I am planning on making an additional input bind. So this way you can have your own input for just dropping off the ledge no matter what's underneath you. But that is one thing I just wanted to note right now that when you have climb points stacked like this, because the climbing is based off of an input direction. So, up and then down S and then, left and right A and D. But if I go down, and then down and there's nothing below me, it'll do the drop action. So that's it. Just kind of wanted to iterate that really quickly. So now that we have the drop action in place, and as you can see here, like the animation looked good, it drops from the ledge pretty well, but you can always, adjust that notify release. You can always adjust the blend out time, because here I'll show you what the action will look like with the blend time set to something a little bit lower, like 0.1. You can also set it to 0.15 as well, depending on how you want to do it. But you can see that was a little bit smoother in how he transitions. It was a little bit harsh in the transition to the falling state itself. So, maybe 0.15, and this is where we just start playing around with the values until it really kind of looks in the way that we want it to. I think that looked actually pretty good. He's kind of going right into his falling state, nice smooth transition. So there we go. So now we can go ahead and just leave that as is for right now, and we'll save that. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to work out the vaulting and the mantling from the ledge position. So that's going to be, so for something like this, when we climb up these objects here and then get to this top object, we're going to be able to vault over the other side. So that's kind of what we want to enable now. So we're going to take for that action for me is going to be the ledge climb up monkey vault, this one right here. So you can see he starts in a ledge position, pulls himself up, vaults it over, and then kind of goes into a falling state there at the end. So that's the one we're going to use. So we're just going to go and take this animation, right click, create anim montage there, and we're just going to drag this up into the montages folder we made, and then we're going to double click and open up the actual montage itself. There we go. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do an add new notified track, right click, motion warping, and do like what we've done with all the other action types, excluding the climb jumps. We didn't start those at the beginning, but pretty much all the other action types we're kind of starting right at the beginning with checking what the motion is supposed to be, and then matching it to what the location is. So we're going to set this right about where his hands plant, something like right about here, because then we can have him kind of run forward and, maybe kind of fly. We'll kind of use some of that root motion there in the middle. But we want to make sure that his hand and his are going to be planted and his height is going to be in accordance to what we want. So now from here, we're just going to go to the root motion modifier, warp target name, warp 1, and then ignore z-axis uncheck. And then we're going to right click on the second little track here, add notify state and motion warping. Now make sure these are not going to be necessarily lined up because we want to look at where he kind of flings himself forward a little bit, something right about here. And then we'll just drag forward, something right about, I would say here would be a good point because we don't want to go too close to the end of the animation because then it will clip out. But we want to make sure we kind of put it somewhere just before, because if you have your notify set at the very end of an animation, there is a chance they won't trigger because of the way the montage blend out happens. You would have to set this to 0 and basically completely remove the montage blend in order to make it work, because otherwise it's going to be blended out before it actually triggers the notify. However, something like here, this close to the end, should be just fine. So we're going to go ahead and just right click, notify state, or I'm sorry, add notify, and then we're going to use the reset parkour action notify. Now again, for this one, we're going to keep the movement mode to falling, but we can go ahead and just do the execute in-air trace if we wanted to. But the reason why I'm not doing this yet is because there's a few actions that you can use this in, and we're going to be setting up examples so that way I can kind of cover it more directly. However, this motion warp point here we did not define, so let's fix that. So with this highlighted, going up into the details panel, root motion modifier, warp target name is going to be warp 1, or I'm sorry, warp 3, because we're going to the landing position. We're going to uncheck ignore z-axes, make sure warp rotation is set to true, and then we'll go ahead and click save. Now from here, we just need to go ahead and actually put this into our character. So we're going to go to third person, blueprints, BP third person character, go back to our ledge montage here, use our little files browser here so we can select it in the content browser. And this way we can just go ahead and push this right into the climb up vault over action. Now, just like what we did before, we do need to make sure this action is enabled. So we're going to go up into the climb up vault over and select that to true. Compile, save, and now we'll go ahead and test it out. So we're going to go up to the wall here, climb up, go up. All right, so now that we're at the top of this object, if I go ahead and press W again, you can see that he does the vault over. It's a little bit rough, so we definitely need to do some adjustments, but you know, we're getting there. So let's do some adjustments here. So it looks like maybe if we maybe put the position for the hand somewhat around there, maybe have him start pushing himself to there, and maybe have it end here instead. And then we'll maybe set the blend time instead of a 0.25 to a 0.1, and we'll try that. All right, so if we go ahead and click on play, we'll go ahead and climb up, climb up, climb up, and then we'll vault over. All right, so we got a little bit of a better spot there. Now, one thing we can also do to kind of help us along a little bit is if we go into the dynamic parkour trace system details panel here and go into, we'll just kind of close the climb settings menu for a second. If we go into the miscellaneous overrides here, we're going to go ahead and check the not use default locations, show debug spheres. So we're going to make sure that's set to true, compile and save, and then we're going to click on play. And this way we can look at where the locations are being assessed by the system, because you can see now that there's debug spheres being drawn into the world. So if we go ahead and go up to the top here again, and then we do the vault over action. So it looks like we might have actually wanted to use vault 2 or warp 2, not warp 1. So if we go back to the animation here, go to the motion warping window and set this to warp 2. Now this is just basically the way that I have set the offsets. You can zero out warp 2 and set whatever warp 2's value is to warp 1, because again, for a lot of these mantle type actions, I did set the warp 1 and warp 2 locations to be allowing for height adjustments. So, but we'll use warp 2 and then we'll put it back to where his hands get planted, something like right about there. Again, using the root motion, maybe fixing it right about there. And then we'll go see what that looks like. So by changing the warp point and by doing a little bit of adjustment on the window, we now have that. So it's a little bit rough still, you know, we could probably make it so it goes maybe to more to here, kind of ends in the little end part of the animation. And the reason why I'm showing the montage warp point adjustment here is just to show you guys that sometimes it really does just take some fine tuning. You can see now that that worked out pretty well. Now, there's one thing that I did want to note, because we haven't set this part up yet. However, with climbing, and now that we can like attach to points and stuff, I want to note that. So right now, if I move around, you can see that orient, rotation, and movement is currently operational. So right now, wherever I move my camera, my character will want to move to. However, if I go ahead and go up to a climb point and I just drop off, no longer does the character rotate towards my position. The reason for this is something that we had talked about a little bit inside of the climbing setup video, is that the system overrides a variety of things that could be problematic during its execution. However, there is a way to be able to ensure that whatever you have set up can be reset by the time that climbing is over. So if we go into the third person, blueprints, BP third person character, and if we go under the My Blueprint section, interfaces, and this one is under primary events, you're going to see action ended execution. So if we double click and bring this into our graph, this is essentially going to trigger every single time that we're basically going from a climbing state into a non-climbing state. And we can do something very simple by getting our character movement component, pulling off, and we're just going to set orient rotation to movement. And then if we pull off, connect the execution pin, set that to true. Now, just with this one little node here, so I just added in that little function event and hooked in my rotation preference. And then if I go ahead and click on play now and go up to a climbing point, and then if I drop, you can see now he goes and he rotates towards me properly. So this is one thing you're going to want to set up. And how you set it up with the action event execution is, it's entirely up to you. You can go ahead and set it up to, use controller desired rotation or whatever it is that you're using. But you are going to want to make sure that you use this event to set your preferred movement or rotation type if you don't have something running off like an event tick. Now, if you do, you're going to need to do a bit of a workaround. Now, this is something for those of you using the Gasp character. You're going to have to do this as well. But if you're using something of like an event tick to check rotation, you're going to want to use, if we get the dynamic parkour trace system, which is duplicated off to the side here. Now, if I pull off, we're going to get active climb style. And then if we get the enum equals, so we're just going to pull off an enum equal. If we use the enum equal to none, you're going to want to basically use this as your branch check for your rotations. So if the enum is equal to none, if that's true, then you would run whatever it is that you're running for your standard rotation check. If it's false, leave it blank. The reason is that the system will override everything before it sets this. So this is going to be set first, and then all your rotation values are going to be overridden. So if it's going in, every tick it's checking your rotation, it's going to then know, okay, well, we've set climbing to a new value. So the second it stops setting the information, the system will then go ahead and shut everything off. And then by the time that you exit the climbing state, which is ultimately this point in the animation that you're defining with this notify here, is that when that triggers, it's going to go ahead and set climbing back to none, which means that it'll then go ahead and use your standard rotation. So it's really kind of the same thing. If you're using the event tick, the only difference is that you're not going to want to use the execute event for rotations. Just because it's not really going to provide a smooth result. But if you're using event tick or any sort of like constantly running event for your updates, this is all you would really have to add. All right, so now that we have the ledge vault action, let's go ahead and take a look at what we would need to do to set up the mantle version. So I'm going to take this wall here, I'm just going to pull it back and make it a little bit bigger, more of like a mantle type of zone here. And we're going to go up to the tutorial assets, animations, and we're going to grab let's see, where is it? Ledge climb up monkey. All right, so you can see we just go to the ledge position, vault up, and then he kind of goes into like a stand, getting ready to run almost. So what we're going to do is we're just going to grab this, right click, create anim montage, and we'll drag it into the montages folder. So now we have these three animations, but we're just going to work on the one that we got now. So that's the regular climb up here. All right, so now what we're going to do is go to the track, add notify track, right click, add notify state, motion warping, and we're going to do basically the same thing we did for the other one, where we're going to look at where he kind of plants his hands, something right about there, pull the track up there, go to the details panel, root motion modifier, expand the window there, and we're just going to put under the warp target name, warp, we'll do the warp 2 this time. All right, and then under the ignore Z axes, we're going to uncheck that, keep rotation, the warp rotation checked, and we're going to look at where he starts to go into the landing spot. So it'll be right about here, I would say would be a good zone. So we're going to right click on the second notify track here, add notify state, motion warping, and we'll just skip over this box frame here, and then we'll pull this to here because this is going to be our landing point. So for this one, under the warp root motion modifier, we're just going to name this to warp 3, ignore Z axes uncheck, and keeping warp rotation checked. Now from here, what we want to do though is do a right click, add notify, reset parkour action. Now, unlike the other ones though, we're not going to keep this one at falling. This one we're going to put to walking because he's landing on a location. So we want to make sure that his movement mode is set to walking now, and this is going to be one of those actions that we're not going to use the in-air trace. So we'll go ahead and save that really quick. And then we'll go back to our character. Actually, we'll make sure to highlight that in the browser here using the little file magnifying glass icon. And then we'll go over to our ledge action selector, and we'll go ahead and put the climb up mantle right into there. Perfect. So we'll compile, save, go to the dynamic parkour trace system, open up the climb settings menu, climb type, ledge type settings, allowed on ledge actions, and climb up mantle, set that to allow. All right, so now if we go ahead and compile, save, minimize, and hit play, we should be able to now climb up these two objects here, and then we're going to go ahead and mantle right on top. Look at that, perfect. Now, something interesting to note here as well is if we go ahead and we climb up to the top here, because we've set up the action, we can also dive to the other side. And now we can climb up again, and we can dive to this side. And now we can drop down to here. And now we can move over to here. And then we can come up here. And then we can vault over this thing. So now we've set up the ability to do a really cool basic transitional between two different types of climb points with two different types of top sections, and allowing you some really cool dynamic input options along the way. Now, the dynamic input options we haven't gotten to yet, just to clarify, but that is going to be something we're going to be talking about once we set up the rest of these actions. Now, speaking of which, the next action that we're going to be setting up is going to be the Vault 180 to opposite ledge side. Now, this is an action, just to show you here. When I pull this up, you'll see it starts from like a sort of mantle position, or a ledge hang position, and then he kind of vaults over, and actually, you know what, here, I'll turn off the root motion here so that way you can actually see the way that it's going to be. You can see now he's on the other side. So he kind of vaults over, goes to the other side, and it's kind of like if you were on a wall and just going from one side to the other. Really good for like stealth games or really cool traversal options and things like that. So there's some really cool options you can do with this. But we're going to go ahead and just re-enable root motion there. And this is going to be the next one we're going to work on. So we're going to go right click, create, and a montage, and push this right into our montages folder just by dragging it up into it. Now, the thing is with the Vault 180 action, there is a little bit of a difference in how the actions are interpreted, and I'm going to show you guys this here now. So if I go into the third person, blueprints, BP third person character, I'm going to go into the dynamic parkour trace system, and I'm going to set the Vault 180 opposite ledge side. I'm going to set that to true. Now, if I go ahead and hit play, if I climb up here, now if I don't press the sprint key, it should automatically try to take it, and you'll see that Warp 2 is the sort of land point. It's not Warp 1. So the reason why I did that is primarily because you're moving to the object's depth. You're starting from its original height, but then you're moving across to its depth. That was kind of the logic behind it, but I know that might not make sense to everybody, but that's just the way it's set up. So it does, you know, it all works. It just might require some getting inside of my head way of thinking. I don't really know. But anyway, so let's go ahead. We're going to go back to the animation here. So we're going to go into the montages folder and pull up that animation, that montage we just made. So that's this one right here. Now, the way that I like to do this is I like to have basically the animation be driven by its root motion starting position pretty much right up to maybe like right about here. And then from here is when I'll do the notify, right click, add notify state, motion warping, and I'll look at where he gets to his endpoint. So maybe something like right about here. And then I'll drag this to there. And this is where I'll set that warp 2 point. So there we go. Now we're going to make sure to uncheck the ignore Z axes. Warp rotation remains checked. And then we're just going to add a new notify track. And then right underneath the endpoint here, we're just going to go right click, add notify, and set climbing. Now, there's a few different things in the ways that you can control this. This is just going to be the first way I'm going to show you. So we're just going to make sure to select it into our content browser by clicking the little file browser icon there. And we're just going to go ahead and throw it right into the Vault 180 to opposite ledge side slot here. And then compile and save. We have the action already enabled. So now we can go ahead and click on play and we'll see what it looks like. All right, so we'll go up, and then we'll go ahead and do the vault over. And it doesn't look too bad. There's a little bit of a jitter at the end there, but, you know, that's something we can easily fix. So 9 times out of 10, the reason why that jitter happens, and with these type of rotational animations, actually we should pay attention to where the jitter is happening. So let's take a look at where it happens. So it happens when he goes into sort of his land point. It doesn't necessarily happen when he gets into his transition, like when he's going into the warp rotation section. So let's go ahead and just try to look at this one more time. So we'll go up one more time, and then, yeah, it's definitely when he hits the landing position, when he's trying to move to here. So we're going to maybe move this back a little bit, move it back a few frames here. And then we're also going to take the blend out time and set it to 0.15. We're not going to set it all the way down to 0.1 yet. If we need to, we will. But we'll just go ahead and we'll climb up and climb up. And then we'll go ahead and do the vault over here. And now we get a nice, good transition. Now he's a little bit lower than he should be. So, maybe we can split the middle ground here and maybe go something like this. Because with the new blend out time, we can set it a little bit later and it should jitter a little bit less. So if we go up, and then we go around and over, and boom, there we go. Now he's actually perfectly aligned. So now we can do the vault over. Now here's the thing is that when you have the sprint modifier in use, what's going to happen is if you press shift, or in this case it would be sprint, and then W, he will do the vault over action. However, if you do not press the sprint key, it will do the 180 vault action. Now this is only if you have the 180 vault action enabled. If I go ahead and just to show you here, go to the BP third person character, and I'm going to turn off under action modification settings, sprint modifier. I'm going to turn this off. And then the defaulted actions, this is where it's going to select what the default action is. We're going to do the climb up vault action. We're going to select standard and uncheck the vault 180 to opposite ledge side. So if I go ahead and do that now, you'll see that if I just go up, and now it does the vault over. Now I can also, with using the sprint modifier, I'm just showing you the various ways. So if I go ahead and select sprint modification to true, now vault 180 to opposite ledge side is currently not selected as an available action. So if I go up to this object here now, and go up, and then up, and you can see that now it does the vault. So you can use this however you want with the sprint modification. If you have it set to true, it'll go ahead and then do an override for whenever you're pressing the sprint key. So whenever you're pressing the sprint key, so like right now I'm pressing sprint and hit W, it does vault over. But if I just run back around and go around to here, go up again, and then if I don't press the sprint key and just press W, he now does the vault over. See, just like that. So this is where I was talking about the dynamic inputs and the way that certain modifiers are going to take place with changing how an action is going to take place. And this is where you can really get some really interesting dynamic gameplay just from your traversal and parkour system inside of the game. Now, another example of a sprint modified action is going to be the ledge jump off action, which is going to be this one right here. Now, if I go ahead and just take the root, take enable root motion to turn it off here, you can see that he just kind of jumps off the ledge and enters into a free fall state just like this. Now, this is going to work very similarly to how the way that we used or set up the drop animation, where we're not really going to use warp points. We're actually going to use the root motion of the animation, and then we're going to decide when we want to have the normal locomotion system come over and take over. So we're going to go into the notifies track here, or actually no, we got to make the montage first. So we're going to right click, create and a montage, and then we'll drag this into our montages folder here, and then we'll open up the montage and work with that first. All right, so now that we've got this, what we're going to do is, I got to make sure root motion is enabled. Perfect. Yeah, if you ever disable root motion to look at something, always make sure to re-enable it. And if you re-enable it in the animation sequence, it'll make sure to enable it in the montage as well, because the montage is just kind of going off of whatever information is inside of your animation sequence. So if we go ahead and open up the ledge jump now, you can see he's got his root motion back. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go into the notifies track, add a new track. I guess we don't really need to add one, but and we're going to look at right about, I would say here, and we're going to go into the notifies, right click, add notify, and then we're going to do the reset parkour action. And we want to make sure movement mode is set to falling. And again, we're keeping the execute in air trace off for right now, just because we are going to be talking about that after. And then we're going to go into the character blueprint here, and we're going to make sure jump off is set to true. And under the jump off animation here, we're going to put the ledge jump action here that we've got here. So, again, just finding it by clicking on this little file browser icon, and then the character blueprint, you can go ahead and select a little arrow and it'll drop it in. So we'll compile and save. And now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and hit play. Now from here, what we can do is if we press S, we'll just drop off, right? It'll just kind of drop us down off the ledge. Now, if we press the sprint key, so in my case, shift, and then I hit S, he'll then do the drop instead, or the jump off, I should say. Now, as you can see there, the jump was a little bit rough. So, maybe we put the parkour reset a little later. Take a look at how that looks. And this is where, again, it's just kind of playing around with how it's defined. That's a little bit better, but I think we may need to define that actually earlier would be probably better rather than later. So maybe something more like that. And then you can just keep playing around with it. There. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Yeah, perfect. You can always play around with the blend times and, finick with this just a little bit more if you wanted to, but, it's really all about how you want it to have it set up. So, at this point, I can go ahead and I can jump off and, it's smooth enough. I think I could get away with that, but I'm not going to because I am OCD as hell, and I'm sure a lot of you guys who are doing this probably are as well. I don't know if you can do game design very well without being a touch of OCD. But anyways, that's a topic for another day. So now that we got the reset parkour action in there, this is another example of the shift modifier, or the sprint modifier, I'm sorry. So if we go up and we just do S to drop down, we'll just do the normal drop. However, if we press the shift key and then press S, we'll now do the jump off action. So this is part of the modifications option. Now again, the modifications are only going to take the actions that you select. So you can use the sprint modifier to be able to allow you to do the standard drop down or do the jump off. But realistically, you're going to want to make sure to have, if you're not using the sprint modifier, you are going to want to make sure to select the proper default, because this one doesn't have the same sort of override that some of the other actions do. It's just going to select whatever default action you have. So if you want to draw it to do the jump off, select jump off. If you want it to do the drop down, select drop down. Or use the sprint modifier, which is just a simple Boolean setup. All right, so now that we got this set up here, what we can do is the last action that we're going to be setting up here, just to make sure that we've got all the ledge actions together, is going to be the jump behind to ledge. Now, there is an additional minor setup that is required for this action, but what we're going to do is we're also going to make it out of two different animations. So we're going to go through this process. I'm going to show you guys how to be able to take two different animations and merge them into a useful montage. Now, bear in mind, the ones that I'm using, the lineups of the start and ends aren't the best. So it's going to look a little off, but modifications in Blender or your own custom stuff, it'll make it just fine. I'm just showing you, like, this is just how you can do it if you have the animations that line up properly, or if you're just playing around and testing, either way. But if we right click in the content browser here, click on, or go over to animation here, and then click on the animation montage here, select your skeleton. I'm going to name this jump to ledge behind, and then we'll double click to open this up. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take two different animations here. We're going to grab the A jump ledge 180 right, so this way it does the kind of jump off here just like that and goes into the falling state. But then we're also going to grab the ledge attach animation here, so that way it goes from that falling state into the ledge grab. You can see here the root bone or pivot of the pelvis or something. I don't really know what the problem is. I haven't really gone through and searched it because I don't use these too much, other than just in examples. So yeah, there's a little bit of an offset, but it's not too bad. Now, if we go ahead and just save this, and we'll open this up so this way we can start adding in our warp points. So we're going to add notify. Now, the jump behind, the way that this works is that your final destination when you get to here is just going to be like with everything else. You're going to use warp 1 as your end destination. So what we're going to do is the notify state, motion warping, and we're going to get right around where he's kind of going to attach to the point, which I would say is right about here, at least a good starting spot. And then from here, we're going to look at where he releases from his actual originating ledge, something about there, and then there we go. So now we're going to go from here to here, end ledge, start ledge. Or, sorry, start ledge, end ledge. I had that backwards. Now, for the root motion modifier, we're going to take the warp target name it to warp 1, ignore z-axis, uncheck, and we're going to make sure to check warp rotation to true. Now, one thing you might find is you might need to wait until it reaches its full rotation, maybe something like this, or you might get issues. I'll leave it as is right now just to show you the issues you might encounter and show you what it looks like after doing the adjustment. So if we go into add notify, and then we're going to go into the set climbing, and we'll make sure set climbing is set right there like that. Perfect. So we're going to save this, go in, and we'll make sure this is selected. and we'll put this into the jump to ledge behind action. Now, as I had said earlier, we're going to need to do one additional setup piece to make this happen because it doesn't just work on its own. There is an input boolean that has to be pushed into the system, so that way it knows that you're trying to do a trace for a ledge behind him rather than the normal ledge trace around the actor. So in order to be able to make that, I'm going to go ahead and set up a new keybind, and I'm just going to go keyboard left control. Now you can set this up however you want. I'm just using an additional keybind because control is just an easier one. And then what I'm going to do is grab the dynamic parkour trace system, and then we're going to get the trace behind. So this boolean right here is going to be what you want to use whenever you want to do a trace behind to look for ledges behind the character rather than, again, the standard around the character ledge search. So we're going to go and get the set node here. We'll just control D so we can get two of them here, just like this. Make sure they both have their target connection. And then off of pressed, we'll set it to true. And then off of released, we'll set it to false. Perfect. Just like that. So now if we go compile and save, and we'll just need to make sure to enable this action here. So we're going to go into the climb settings, climb type settings, ledge, allowed edge, ledge actions, and leap to ledge behind. Perfect. So now that we got that allowed, we got our animation in there. Now we just got to give a place for him to be able to jump to. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to we'll just take this bad boy and we'll kind of just move him up, move him like this. So that way it's kind of on the other side here, and then we'll just pop these guys through here, and then we'll just rotate the collision boxes like so. I am working on adjusting so that way the actual boxes will be moving with, and that's going to be coming in like the next update. It's something I did intend to add in the most recent update I pushed through. However, it was unfortunately did escape my mind as I got a breakthrough with something else I'd been working on. So, excitement got the better of me. I will 100% admit this. But I am going to be making sure that that's the case. So that way it makes the setup overall just easier. But only impacts if you're trying to use the spawn climb mesh, as the meshes just don't rotate with the boxes currently. But you can always do the rotation through the adjustment of the location anyways. But anyway, so let's go ahead. We're going to do a climb up now. So we're going to do a climb up to here, and we'll go up to the top one here. Now, if I press Control and then let's say D, for example, you can see now he does the ledge attach to the other side. I can go to this side, and I can drop down, and then I can go to this side, and I can go up again, and then I can go this way. So now we can go ahead and we can jump to ledges behind us. Now, as you can see there, the transition's not the smoothest, and it's, again, just purely because of the fact that the two animations, start and end points, aren't lined up perfectly, so it does create a slight problem. But it doesn't look like the rotation is getting adjusted very well. Very off. Like, it doesn't seem to be causing a problem with trying to adjust the rotation. So that's perfect. So we can go ahead and now we can use that, so the warp rotation can be set to true. But if you do have any problems, though, sometimes you might just need to set it to like right around here, so this way the character is fully at his rotation if you do end up having any problems. As you might not be using the same animations, as I like to say in pretty much every one of these videos, you can use any animations you want. These are just examples that I'm showing you today. These are just the animations that I'm using to show you how to make it all functional. But whatever animations you can use whatever ones you want. Just keep the things that I'm saying in mind as far as like tracking where the root bone is and some adjustments you might need to make to the warp positions or the offsets or, things like that. Just keep all that in mind and you can follow the same principles, but with a completely different set of animations. All right, so now that we have all of our primary ledge actions in place, the last thing I want to do before we move into the final of the transitional actions, which is going to be the ledge corner transitions, we're going to set up the jump to ledge here. So this action right here that we did not set up in the gap action video. Now, the reason why we didn't set this up in that video is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to take this, I'm just going to group it and move it way out of our way here. All right, so if the jump to ledge action, it's going to be set up in the same way that we just set up the jump to ledge behind. So we're just going to right click, animation montage, retarget Skelly, which is just my skeleton, and then jump up to ledge. So if we open this up here, now the two animations I want to grab are going to be this one, which I'm actually going to duplicate it because I don't know if this one's root motion, because this is also, oh, it does have root motion enabled. Perfect. So I can delete that. So we can go ahead and get this and just, let's see. Yeah, perfect. So if we right click, so if we go ahead and open up the jump to ledge here again, because I had to close down the windows. So we're going to take the jump here. We're going to put this in. This way it kind of goes from like a running position, and then it's going to go into a jump. Now from that jump, we're going to then take the ledge attach animation and put that over at the end. So this way it'll do a jump and then attach the ledge. Perfect, just like that. So now we can take both of these here though. We're going to put them into our montages folder. And then the jump up to ledge, we're going to open up here so we can put the motion warping windows in. Now, just like the jump to ledge behind, warp 1 is really the only one you're going to be using. So we're going to look at right around where he attaches, something maybe right about here, I would say. We're going to add another warp window here, or notify section, I'm sorry. And then just right click, add notify state, motion warping, and we'll just do this backwards. We'll set the endpoint, and then we'll scrub through, I'd say something maybe right about here, just where, he gets off the ground and he's kind of maybe somewhat in the air. Because this way he'll then go and kind of get to the point. All right, perfect. So we'll take the warp target name under the root motion modifier for the details section here. Name this warp 1. Ignore z-axis is going to be unchecked. Warp rotation stays checked. And then under the notify section, we're going to right click, add notify, and then set climbing, just like this. Now we'll go ahead and save this. Go back to our character blueprint, which for me is third person blueprints, BP third person character. And then we'll just select this montage that we made by using that little same icon that we've been using. And then in the gap actions, we're going to put this in jump up to ledge. Now, this action can be used to be able to jump up to ledges that are, across from the character. So in situations like this. However, if you have climb points set up that are closer to the ground, something like this here, you can actually use the jump up to ledge to be able to get to those points. So if we go to, just to make sure that they're enabled, so we're going to go to the ground action settings, under the gap actions, allowed gap actions, jump up to ledge, set that to true. Then we'll compile, save, and now we'll go over and we'll just press the space bar near this here. You can see there that he did go to the ledge. Now, he did go through the ledge a little bit, and that's because we didn't give him any control here. So we're actually just going to push this all the way back, just like that, because then he doesn't have any, he can't go in front of the point. You can see that now he's attaching perfect. However, the attachment is not exactly perfect itself. So we're going to maybe grab it and drag it up maybe a frame or so, and then we're going to set the blend out to 0.15. So save that. And then go ahead and click on play and try it now. All right, so that seemed to work. Let's go ahead and do it again. Now, bear in mind, this, as you can see, it's saying jump to ledge in the top. This is not I'm not jumping and it's doing the attach to ledge from air, because I know these are basically the same sequence of animations, but I just want to show that it is saying jump up to ledge in the top corner on the print string. So this is a way that you can use this to be able to get to ledge actors that might be a little bit higher. Like, from this position, I suppose you could probably maybe attach to it. But if it were, something maybe like this, you would definitely want that kind of more like jumping nature to get to it rather than having to, fly up to it in just a quick flip. So that's all of the ledge initiation actions and all of the primary ledge actions. So now from here, what we need to do is we're going to be setting up the corner transition. So inside of situations like this, for example, where there's an area where you could go around the corner and be able to go from this ledge here to this ledge here, and then to this ledge here, and then this one here, and then just keep going around and around and around and around we go. So that's going to be the last thing that we're going to set up, is going to be those corner transitional animations, allowing you to be able to do some really cool stuff with, additional 90-degree corners. Now, there's two different types that we have. We have the inner and outer, and depending on which animation pack you're using, these might be backwards. So we're going to kind of go a little bit more into this, but I just want to note that there are two different types, so we're going to be going over this version here, which I personally consider more of an outer transition, because this is more of an outside corner, whereas if there was something here, this would be like the inside corner. I don't know, that's just my way of thinking as well, but it seemed a few other animation packs had the same way of thinking, and some of them did not. So I just kind of went with what I felt like would work best for me while developing. But let's go ahead and we're going to grab those corner transitions, because I've not grabbed those yet, because I want to show you guys some examples of what those look like. So we're going to take a closer look at these specifically. So we're going to go into the parkour animations, UE4 skeleton, and this is just my animation pack that I'm using, just to clarify. But the animations that we're going to be looking for are under ledge, and there should be some transitional corner animations. Here we go. So we got corner, outer R, outer L, inner R, inner L. All right, so we're going to take these and we're going to drag them over into our animations folder here and copy. And then we'll go ahead and just make sure that these are actually tied to the skeleton. So we'll highlight them all, right click, replace the skeleton, retarget skeleton, which is just my character skeleton. And then we're also going to right click again, asset actions, and bulk edit via property matrix, making sure that under the display section, root motion, enable root motion, check that so they're all checked. All right, so now that we got our settings set up on our animations, let's take a look at these. So this is considered the inner animation. So this is where it's kind of grabbing a corner, swinging around, and getting to the other side. Now what I'll do is I'll go ahead and disable root motion, so this way we can actually take a look at the way that the character is moving. And you'll see that it's a 90-degree transition. All right, so this is one of those ones where it's defining it as inner, but I look at it as he's grabbing the outer corner edge. So to me, this reason why this one is technically, it's labeled as inner, but it would go into the outer category selection slot for the system selection. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure this root motion is enabled there. Perfect. And we're going to set up the corner transitions for the, I guess, inner in this animation context first. So we're just going to get a new folder and go corner transitions. And we're going to put these inside of that folder. This way we can kind of isolate the area that we're working with. So we'll take these corner transitions, move here, and open it up. And I'm just going to go ahead and make sure this folder is named correctly. There we go. Corner transitions. Okay, so we're going to grab the inner left and rights first. So we got the inner left, inner right here. And we're going to take both of these, create and a montage. And then we're also going to right click, create a new folder here. And we're just going to call this montages. This way we can kind of separate out our anim sequences from our montages. We're going to start with the left one here. So we're going to open this up. And the way that the montages work for the left and right of the corner transitions is that Warp 1 and Warp 2 are being used as the kind of corner transition location. And the reason why is because it allows for, because like this one specifically, a lot of them that I had either tested or looked at what the movement type was, a lot of them start from like this position, grab onto a corner, swing around, and then grab to the other side. So there's a bit of a buffer period, and I found that the only way to ensure that that movement does not either get lost or accidentally overridden is to provide an additional location. So we're using Warp 1 and Warp 2 for the locations. Warp 1 being kind of the point where he's grabbing onto the corner, so like right about here. And then Warp 2 is going to be our final destination point right about here. All right, so what we're going to do is get the track, add notify track, right click, add a notify state motion warping, put it into the beginning here, just like so. And we're going to look at where he kind of grabs onto the corner, but he hasn't quite transitioned his legs fully, something right about there. And then we'll drag this up, and then in the root motion modifier in the details panel, we're going to set this to warp 1. Now, what we're going to do here, though, is we're going to make sure uncheck ignore z-axes, but we're also going to uncheck warp rotation because we don't want the rotation to be warped here. We actually want to wait until we get to right about, I would say, here. And then we're going to right click, add notify, state, motion warping, and then look at where he gets his attachment, maybe like right about there. And then we're going to set this one to warp 2. All right, now we're going to keep the warp rotation checked on warp 2, but we're going to make sure to uncheck ignore z-axes. So the first one here, we're not using the rotation because we want the animation's 90-degree angle to be able to kind of allow it to not be overridden and not look in a weird direction when he's trying to do his corner transition. And then from here, we're going to take over and start actually doing that transition to the normal direction of the ledge we're trying to attach to. Now this will make more sense when we actually start executing the animation. So let's go ahead and just add our notify. We're going to right click, add notify, and set climbing. So we're just going to go ahead and just right there. Perfect. All right, so we're going to save that. And we're going to do the same thing on the right side here. Now, one thing that's pretty cool is if your animations, like this is pretty much a mirrored version of the other side. So what we can actually do here is we can highlight by just shift selecting all of these motion warping points, and then we can Control C, then go back to the inner R, make sure that you have the same number of notify points here, right? And we're going to put it at the beginning, Control V, and it didn't quite do it the way it normally does. Usually I can make it so that way it'll align itself the way it was in the other animation, but it looks like the frame rate's not the same on these, but that's okay. But so at least we still have our points. We still have, they're already named for us. All of our settings are set, so we don't really have to do anything else. We just need to kind of redefine how their locations are being assessed. So we'll take a look at right about here where he gets his reattachment to the ledge, something right about there, and go ahead and set the set climbing back right about there. All right, so what we're going to do is we'll just quickly compare and contrast the two animations here. So we're going to right click on this one and just open a new window. And then we'll pull it off to the side here, pull this up, something like this. This way we can kind of compare and contrast and look at the two side by side and make sure that they're somewhat within the same range of each other. And yeah, it's not quite the same, but I think that's within reason enough. So now what we can do is go into our third person blueprints, BP third person character. And if we go to the dynamic parkour trace system here, and then look at the climb settings, corner transition settings, allowed climb actions, we can go ahead and set the inside and outside to true. Now we can go ahead and make sure outside is actually false for right now because we don't have those set up yet, but we can just set inside to true and call it good. Now we also need to call the execution event for the corner transitions. So under the interfaces, action events, you're going to see ledge corner transition action. So we take this, double click to put it into the graph, and just like we've been doing, pull it over, and then box select the mesh in the play montage node, Control D to duplicate, hook up the execution pins, pull off the montage to play, and get a select node. And then for the index, we're just going to plug in the action type. So this way we got the outside left and inside, or outside and inside left and right. So we can compile and save there, and then we're going to go back to our animations folder so we can plug these animations in. So go animations, let's see, corner transitions, montages, perfect. So now we'll just go ahead and put on the inside left, so we'll take the it would be the outside left. So remember, for this particular animation pack that I'm using, it's going to be the opposite of what it says in the system. So it's going to be inside is actually going to be outside, so outside left, and then outside right. So now if we compile, save, minimize, hit play, and we go up to the top of this object here, so where there's actually like some nice corner transition room here, and we can do, accidentally selected the wrong approval type, so we're going to go back to our character blueprint here. I was looking at the animations when I selected it, so yeah, so we're going to make sure outside corner transitions, we're using the ones named inner, but in the system it's outer. So, and again, there are some animation packs that it does follow. That wasn't me just being like, I'm going to name it my way. It's just, there was no consistency that I could follow, so I just did what kind of made the most sense to me. So now if we go ahead, you can see that he does the corner transition. Now, the one thing I want to note is you saw that jittering when he did the corner type here. So if I go, I'm going to do it one more time here, but I'm going to do it on the other side this time. We'll do the left side. You can see that there's a serious jitter that happens, right? So the corner transitions can sometimes be a little finicky. And again, this is just rotation efforts on motion warping and everything like that. It does sometimes need a little bit more fine tuning. So we're going to go into the animations here for our tutorial assets, and then go with corner transitions and open these up. All right, so let's take a look at where the problems are. So the first thing is that its rotation is getting a little bit skewed. So let's see, maybe we need to adjust when it's starting its rotation a little bit earlier. Something maybe right about there. And then I think we also need to push the root bone endpoint maybe to right about here. So this way it's going to kind of, go to that secondary location a little faster. All right, so we go ahead and click on play now. So we just adjusted the left side. We did not adjust the right side. So if I go ahead and click on play now, you can see it's a little bit better, but it's still having, some slight problems. And what we can do here is we can actually maybe just go ahead and adjust this back a little bit. And then we'll try it that way. So we've pushed the first warp position back a little bit of a ways. So you can see now that looks actually a lot better. It's a lot less jitter. So we're going to look and try to do this again. And then we're going to push this back something like here. and maybe move this back a little bit so that way it's lined up better. The problem with these corner transitions sometimes is that when you have the root motion enabled, it's hard to actually see the way the rotation is happening. So you can see we got a little bit better there, but we definitely need to adjust a little bit more. So what I'm actually going to do, and this is something that I just recommend if you ever run into this issue, is if we open up the ledge corner inner left, so that's the one that we're working with here, so the inner left, and we're going to uncheck enable root motion. So this way when we open up the montage, we'll then be able to see the actual movement here and be able to define it a little bit better. So he gets his corner transition right about here, I would say, and he gets to the actual like point on the ledge, I would say, right about there. So let's try that. Let's see how that looks. So if we go and make sure that root motion is enabled on the animation, because otherwise you will not get the results you're looking for at all. We'll go ahead and now just click play and just jump up here, and then we'll go around to the left side here, and we've got a little bit of a better result. But again, once again, it's kind of going through the wall a little bit. So go back to the inner left here, and we'll go ahead and maybe just kind of move it up a few frames. And, this is, again, just, a game of playing back and forth and seeing, okay, this is moving this way. Okay, we're getting this. Okay. All right. Sorry about the jump there, guys. I was just going through the motion warping. I didn't want to take another, 5 minutes or so doing the adjustments, because it's been been a couple weeks just because I've been working on other projects since I've dived into this. And the motion warp windows were fighting me a little bit. So what we got here is I've taken the initial motion warping window for warp 1. And I've extended it out a little bit because this is going to be kind of what defines where he attaches to the corner. So basically when we go up here, we go up to the ledge, we go up at the top here, and then we drift around the edge. You can see that he's going all the way around and ending up right under the warp 2 point. Now, the problem is that the secondary point was actually back a little too far. So the rotation was starting too early. So that's what the ultimate issue was. So if I go with this now, you can see that it's starting right where he's kind of grabbing the ledge point and then setting itself when his root bone hits the end. So this is, again, warp 2. This one is warp 1. So now if we go ahead and if we go to the right side here, which we currently do not have set up correctly at all, if we go ahead and do the same thing here, so we look at right around where he reaches around, so maybe we'll put this right here. Now, I also do recommend on the blend out time, set this to 0.1. We're going to make sure to do the same thing on the other side here. We'll set this to 0.1. All right, so now if we go ahead and click on play and climb up to the top here, and we go around this way, we got that nice smooth transition, and we can go around the right side too. So now we got that and that. Now you can always adjust the warp 2 position. You can bring it back closer to the character if you would like, if it's going a little too far forward. So if we go into the parkour system here, under the action offsets here, under the ledge corner transition offsets. So we've got the inside and outside here. So we're going to go to the outside section, warp 2 blue. And if we adjust the left/right value here, we'll set this to maybe like -40, something like that. So there we go. So we'll start with that. And we'll see how that looks. So we'll go up, and then up, and then up, and then we'll wrap around. You can see we're getting a lot closer to the ledge now than what we were getting in the past. Now, the one thing is because it's using the normal of an object, sometimes this can cause some, as you saw, it kind of stretches out forward a little bit. There is going to be an additional adjustment value that's going to be coming out later. And again, there's going to be tutorial videos that are going to be specific to adjustments and settings, things that are going to be coming out with different updates. But I wanted to go over because the basic setup is always going to remain the same. What I'm showing you in these videos is always going to remain the same. The only difference is there might be additional things that you can do later on. But all right, so now that we have the inside and outside, so now we should be able to have our original action movement back here. So if I go up and then go around, all right, perfect. Then we go back, all right, perfect. So now that we have this set up here, what we can do now is we're going to work on getting the other ones, which is the, I guess, in this case, it would be the outer by the animations, but the inner by the definition of the system. So what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate this cube here. And we're going to pull it up, rotate it 90 degrees here like so. And we're going to line it up with the edge. This way we can create that nice kind of corner transition here, just like what you would normally see in this situation. And then under the corner transitions here, we're going to go and grab the outer and right click, create and a montage, and then we'll just take these and push these into the montages folder. Now we're also just going to go to our character really quickly, so content, third person, blueprints, BP third person character, and we're going to plug those animations in there so that way we have them inside of our selector as well. So we're going to go to the tutorial assets, animations, corner transitions, montages, and these two here. So we got the left side here is going to go into the inner left, and then the outer right here is going to go into the inner right. I know, backwards. It's okay. So let's go ahead and now, even without doing any adjustments, I want to show you guys how this works without doing any adjustments. I'm just going to add the motion warping montage notify here. So we'll put it right about here. Because this is one cool thing about some of these animations, not all of them, and also depends on your meshes. But if we go add notify, set climbing, and then save, and then we also go to the other one here for the right side, do the same thing. So look at right about where it kind of ends his transition of the climb, something right about here, notify, add notify, set climbing, save, and then we'll put both of these two new actions to allow. So if we go to the climb settings, climb type settings, or I'm sorry, the corner transition settings, and then allowed climb actions and inside corner transitions. We'll go compile and save. And now if we go ahead and play, we're going to go all the way up to the top here. And then if I go this way, you can see that he does the transition. However, you can see that he doesn't quite get to the point when he's moving, and that is quite problematic. But in some instances, the animation will actually get a little bit closer to, I think it's just because of the way I have an offset for where he actually detects the location. But what we're going to do now is we'll go ahead and set up the warp points there. That way we can actually get them attached to that new ledge there. And for these actions, we're realistically going to be using warp 1 as the end destination point. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the outer montage here. And so there's two ways that we can go about doing this, depending on the animation problems that you might be having. The first way is to just go add new notify track. We'll just add two for right now. We're going to add a notify state, motion warping, and we're going to look at where he kind of releases to go and grab the next edge. Something right about here. We want to start it a little bit before and look at where he does his full transition inwards and drag this all the way. So we'll drag this to the bottom here and then all the way to the end. Now what we can do from here is go warp target name, warp 1, ignore z-axis, uncheck that, keep warp rotation checked, and then click on save. Now, this is for the left side, and I did that specifically because we have this example here. So I'm going to go ahead and put the left side into, so I'm going to go ahead and click on play so we can show the left side here. So if I go ahead and go climb up now, then up, then I go over, you can see that he tries to go over. But you can see that there was a bit of it didn't like what was going on. So what we're going to want to do, though, is maybe rewind this back a little bit, and then we'll click on play. Because again, anytime that you're dealing with the warp rotation and you're dealing with a different angle, sometimes it's all because of the fact that it's just being set way too early. So maybe something like this. Try that. And we're just going to keep going back. And that's why some of these corner transitions require a little bit of a different setup. And that's why I wanted to showcase, how I would go about setting these up anyways. Now, we can also drag the motion warping window back to the beginning. Now, again, this is just, I'm still showing you the first way of doing it, because there is another way, but it can be a little bit annoying to set up sometimes, but this is just, it's more of a motion warping workaround, but yeah, so if we go up now, we should be able to, now that I've got it far enough back, it shouldn't give that jitter much anymore, just a little bit, maybe put it to right about here. Just put it way farther back, just kind of like move it over to where it's going to be grabbing the ledge point. So we'll go like this. Yeah, so that works a little bit better. So we can keep moving it back, if we need to. We can just literally have it right in the beginning of the animation. Go ahead and just grab onto that ledge point pretty much immediately. Boom, there. So now that we have that set up there, now that that's working. Now the other way that you can do it is you can use two different motion warping points. Now this one we have the warp rotation checked. What you can do is take 2 of these. So I'm going to make a new motion warping window here. Control D here. Why isn't this duplicating? Whatever. Control C, Control V. There we go. All right. So now what we can do though on this one is we're going to take the root motion modifier, warp rotation, turn off. All right. So this way it's going to basically go from here to here. And then from this one is where it's going to use the warp rotation, where it starts to actually do the rotation into the setting of climbing. So if we go ahead and click on save now, then click on play, and then we climb up, you can see we get that nice result. So you can use 2 points, using one to adjust the location and another at the end to adjust the actual rotation, and you do get pretty good results. But again, being able to define these 2 windows and having them line up accordingly can sometimes be a pain. I will say I got lucky on that one. But because of the fact that it's mainly just pivoting off of a neutral location, having it start from here, pivot, and then go, and then we're all set, that's kind of maybe the best way to go about it, but you don't have to do it this way. You can just do the single location like I demonstrated earlier. Now I'm going to go ahead and just take this, duplicate this cube here, so that way I can have 2 of these. And then we're going to go into the outer side here, and we're going to do the same thing where we're going to add a new notify track, right click, notify state, motion warping, and look again for where he kind of does his original grab here, which would be right about there. And then this is going to be warp 1, ignore z-axes, and do uncheck of a warp rotation. And then kind of pivot a little bit for like right about here. And then add a new notify state, motion warping, and then something about here. Uncheck ignore z-axes, leaving warp rotation checked, and we'll move the notify up. So now if we go ahead and click on save, we need to make sure to define this motion warp window, warp 1. All right, so now if we click save, we're good. All right, so now if we go ahead and click play, we go up to the top here and go up and then up. So now if we go here, you can see that now he does that nice adjustment there, does that nice adjustment there, does that nice adjustment there. And now we can swing around this way, we can swing around this way, we can now climb up, we can also jump across here, we can climb down to the ledge here, get back to a climbing state, go all the way around, and then drop down to these points here, and then boom. So we've got a pretty good system going now, guys. We got the corner transitions, ledge actions, and a whole bunch of stuff going on. So in the next video, we're going to be covering certain ways to be able to modify climbing actions, such as using the climb input boolean that comes into the system, as well as certain settings that you can use to be able to adjust the way certain values are going to be set within the system. So this way it can help, like, depending on how you want your ledges to be set up, you might need certain ledge adjustments to be able to ensure that the detections are always finding the ledge accordingly. So we're going to be covering a bunch of that stuff all in the next video, guys. That's going to close it out for today. We've got all the ledge actions, all the transitional actions. We got that gap action back in place now. So I hope you guys have got a good understanding about ledge actions now. I mean, it's been a pretty long video, but there's a lot of different actions and a lot of different ways to set them up. So I wanted to make sure to do a nice in-depth video. But again, the next one, we're going to be covering all the settings and adjustments and things that you can do once you have everything in place. So I hope to see you on the next one, guys. It's going to close it out for this one. But I hope to see you guys in the next video. But until then, stay tuned. And as always, stay animated.